The New York Giants look to avoid a winless season at home on Sunday when they host the Indianapolis Colts, while the Colts look to keep their postseason hopes alive. We'll take a look at those and other storylines as we get you ready for Sunday's game in this special crossover edition of Locked On Giants, Locked On Colts. That's coming your way next.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Today's episode of Crossover Thursday is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use our promo code LockedOnNFL, written in all lowercase letters, to win $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't even need to win your lineup to receive the $50 bonus. Prize Picks, run your game. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special crossover edition of Locked On Giants, Locked On Colts, and happy holidays to everybody, by the way. My name's Patricia Traina. I'm the host of Locked On Giants, and I am joined by Jake Arthur, the co-host of Locked On Colts. And this weekend, the New York Giants and Indianapolis Colts are meeting at MetLife Stadium a day after the anniversary of the greatest game ever played between the two teams back in the day when the Colts were the Baltimore Colts. But nonetheless, the season continues on. A very disappointing season for the New York Giants. Not so much a disappointing season for the Indianapolis Colts, who are still in the playoff run. So Jake and I are going to break down for you the key storylines. We're going to talk about what we feel each team needs to do to win. And we'll just get you ready for another week of football. Jake, welcome on in. Glad to see you, my friend.
What's up, Patricia? Good to be back with you. How you doing?
I'm doing great, considering, my team isn't doing so great. But, it is what it is. And, Jake, right now the Colts, they're hanging on. They're still in the playoff hunt. They need a few things to happen, I think, for them to clinch a spot. But why don't we start off by you telling us the key storylines going into this game, other than obviously the hunt for a playoff berth?
Yeah, the playoff stuff aside, they obviously do have to take care of their business, but they also need to hope for, the Chargers and the Broncos to basically fall apart. So it's a long shot, but it's really all about just winning what's ahead of them. Luckily for the Colts, they usually do pretty well against the kind of cellar dweller teams. They got out to a 38-7 lead against the Titans. And then here it comes, about 3 minutes left in the third quarter on Sunday. The Titans come roaring back because the defense was playing a little too soft and just not executing, not tackling and everything. So this team, they can be very, very frustrating when it comes to grabbing a hold of a game, maintaining a lead, and just kind of, choking the opponent out. They do win these games, but they tend to play down to them a little bit. And they kind of lack a killer instinct. So while they are kind of the deserved favorite in this game, I'm never going to totally discount what the Giants could do. Like the Colts probably will win, but at the same time, I think the Colts are going to let the Giants showcase their potential, whatever that may be. I know the Giants have been kind of going through it, and they just kind of got off another clunker against the Falcons. But whatever juice is left there to be squeezed for the Giants, I'm pretty confident they can do it. Whether they win or not, we'll see. They kind of want to maintain that first overall pick slot, I would imagine. But no, for the Colts, this is just about, Anthony Richardson, keep showing some improvement and everything. He did kind of have to sit on the back burner in this last one against the Titans, of course. It was the Jonathan Taylor show. The Colts put up a franchise record 335 rushing yards. Now, Richardson was a big part of that, but he only threw the ball 11 times. But still, this is just about Richardson primarily and some of the young building blocks just continuing to show improvement. I think there's a lot more for these guys to lose than there is to gain, unfortunately, with the caliber of opponents that are remaining. They've got the Giants. They just finished with the Titans, and then they have the Jaguars next. So big regression would be very damning for them, I think. But the expectation is that they take care of business and at least look like they're building towards positive momentum heading into the offseason.
Jake, I want to ask you about Anthony Richardson because earlier in the year he was benched. He's
Mm-hmm.
since been reinstated as the starter. Have you noticed much of a difference in him returning to the starting lineup? And do you think in retrospect that was a smart move for him?
Yeah, it's at the time he was benched, I don't necessarily know that I agreed with it. But as we came to learn more, because the message coming from the team was so vague and just it left so much there to wonder about and for people to speculate. But by the end of the couple weeks after he had sat, it kind of turned out to be that he just needed to learn what it takes to be a professional quarterback. I feel he was kind of not like he wasn't preparing, but he was preparing to the same level, a running back would need to, or a defensive tackle, basically. But when you're the quarterback, that obviously you got to be a different breed, and you have to be, first one in, last one out. Like you have to eat, sleep, breathe football. And being the youngest starting quarterback in the NFL, he just had some things to learn. I think that was a wake-up call for him. He was pretty heartbroken over it when he did get benched. But by all accounts, he has completely turned it around. They immediately saw differences in him after he got benched. A lot of people would think he's, Joe Flacco is an example. Really, it's been Sam Ehlinger. Sam is, God, I think this is year number 4 for him in the league. But he's kind of a veteran in there. He's the longest tenured one in that Colts quarterback room. Obviously, Flacco is in his first year, but Richardson has really leaned on Ehlinger to see what it's like to be a pro. Obviously, he's seen what Joe Flacco has done as well. But I think there's kind of a kinship there that Richardson has found in Ehlinger to kind of help guide him. But as for the on-field product, I think the stats don't look a whole lot different. Based on how the Colts offense is, the passing game is very vertically based, so the completion percentage is never going to be as efficient and look as good as you want it to. But his pass catchers have left so much to be desired. Each week, the Sunday was fine, against the Titans, but each week it seems like there's a bunch of, inopportune drops or guys just not being in the right spot at the right depths of their routes and things like that. And it's just very frustrating because Anthony does take the brunt of it because you see the box score, you see his completion percentage, you're like, God, this guy stinks. And it's just not the whole story. But one of the bigger things for me is his composure. He was really chaotic before he got benched. Like it was just constant chaos and, happy feet, and just, he did not look calm whatsoever. But now he's starting to make some of the shorter, easier throws that normal quarterbacks can make in their sleep. He used to be airing those, but he is kind of dialed in on those things now. He's making really, really clutch plays when the Colts need it. There were 2 road games, Jets and Patriots, that he led fourth quarter comeback victories on, again, on the road. The Colts defense allowed the Titans to come back, roaring back in this last one, and the Colts offense needed to get to that 2-minute warning in the fourth quarter and seal it off. And boom, Richardson hits Michael Pittman Jr. on a perfectly placed ball on 3rd and 8 to essentially put the nail in the coffin of the Titans. So Anthony has kind of got that clutch gene that is almost impossible to find in guys. You don't just get it in every guy, even if they're a good quarterback. So we found out a lot about Anthony in terms of his willingness to be coached, the fact that he's actually pretty clutch, and that, he can turn things around. A lot of these young guys are really stubborn and they're kind of sticks in the mud, and it takes them a lot to kind of change. And it did take him being benched to change, but he did exactly do that, change. He's gotten better and is, from all accounts, preparing the right way now.
And Jake, from a defensive perspective, where are the Colts most vulnerable right now?
Middle of the field. That's an easy one. That's been the tale throughout the entire season. Basically, if you're an opponent of the Colts, you've got a tight end group in a slump or anything, like, get ready for the breakout because it's coming. But no, The passing game over the middle of the field, very vulnerable. The Colts linebackers, it's not really their bread and butter. They're much more run stuffers when they're at their best. But then at times, if you've got them with space, they over pursue and they miss a lot of tackles as well. That's arguably the biggest reason the Titans were able to come back in the manner that they did on Sunday, was because it's just a complete lack of execution and missed tackles. So there are some guys on the Giants who I think could have a decent game. A guy like Tyrone Tracy, who's able to, contribute in multiple ways. I could see a big performance for him. You kind of look at Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears, the most recent examples. Those slippery kind of guys who can catch the ball and run the ball and kind of make guys miss a little bit. They can have some success against the Colts.
All right, so that's the rundown on the Colts. Now, coming up next, we're going to flip the script and we're going to talk about all the things the Giants have done wrong and how this game is going to be an uphill battle. You are tuned in to Crossover Thursday, Locked On Giants, Locked On Colts. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Again, rocketmoney.com/lockedon.
All right, so let's talk about the Giants. I've got a feeling I'm going to learn a great deal here. So other than, just saying what went wrong, let's talk about, kind of some more recent items. First and foremost, Drew Lock, the current quarterback, Tommy DeVito was banged up. Obviously, we all know what happened with Daniel Jones. What's the current quarterback situation? Like, is it Drew Lock for the last couple weeks of the season here? Should we expect to see another change? What's going on under center there in New York?
That's a very good question. As we record this, Drew Lock underwent an MRI on his throwing shoulder. So there is a possibility he might not be ready to play. It's kind of early in the week. Disclaimer, we're taping this early on a Monday, actually. So we don't yet know. The Giants will practice on Tuesday. We'll have clarification there. But my impression is that if Lock is healthy, it will be him over Tommy DeVito. And quite honestly, Jake, it's a head scratcher for me. Drew Lock, we kind of know what Drew Lock is at this point. And the Giants, the quarterback situation, as everybody knows, is in flux right now. So why not see what else you have with Tommy DeVito? See if maybe he can't be part of your bridge situation next year while you go out and get your permanent franchise quarterback. But yet, for whatever reason, it was really one game for Tommy DeVito. Then the next week it was Drew Lock. Then they had the injuries back and forth, and it's just been a revolving door. So, I'm not really sure who's going to be healthy enough to play. I do think if Drew Lock is healthy, he's going to be the guy. Would I start Drew Lock? I'd probably go with Tim Boyle if I were looking to win the game, but, who knows exactly what they're thinking as far as their evaluation goes.
Yeah, and so obviously the quarterback situation has been in flux, but they have had some consistent, it seems, position players. Malik Neighbors seems like he's having an absolute star of a season. Tyrone Tracy, yet another big-time rookie. Those guys included, who should Colts fans really be paying attention to in terms of the playmakers for whoever is going to be under center?
Well, yeah, definitely Malik Neighbors. He's a guy who they have targeted a lot. Like we're talking double digits the last few games. So he's a guy who can break it open. Tyrone Tracy, you mentioned, he's kind of their lead running back. Now he has an ankle injury that he aggravated yesterday, in the loss to the Falcons. So we'll see just how much he's able to do if he's able to go. Um, Tight end, Daniel Bellinger remains an under the radar type of guy, especially with Theo Johnson on IR. Daniel Bellinger has always been a good pass catcher, not as athletic as Johnson to where he can pick up the yards after the catch, but certainly a guy that, if you want to get the ball out and you maybe surprise some people, that's a guy you can certainly go to. And then, of course, you've got Wan'Dale Robinson, who's that shifty little slot receiver who can also, run jet sweeps and end arounds and stuff like that for you. And then let's not forget Darius Slayton, the grizzled veteran. Hard to believe he's one of the longest tenured guys on the team still. Darius Slayton has the deep speed, the ability to slice off the top of a defense. It's just a matter of, will the Giants offensive line allow enough time for the quarterbacks to drop back and make his reads and get the ball out of his hands? And then will the quarterback see what he needs to see and make the right decisions? That's where it gets a little murky if you're the Giants.
All right. So with these Colts, again, you kind of never know what to expect week to week, what they're going to be able to take advantage of or who's going to take advantage of them. So with the Giants, of course, every team has got to have something they do at least decently well. So what do the Giants do, whether offensively or defensively, that should kind of, put the Colts at, like, what are the Colts really focusing on, circling in red, I guess, when it comes to the Giants this week?
That's a tough one because lately the Giants haven't done a whole lot well.
Are they packing it in a little bit?
I don't know. You know what? A lot of people say to me, "Yeah, they're tanking. They're tanking." I'm sorry, I'm not buying the idea that they're tanking, because if they were tanking, then they would put Brian Burns and they would put Malik Neighbors and they would put Tyrone Tracy in bubble wrap the rest of the year instead of risking these guys who are already banged up and some of whom may or may not need surgery at the end of the year. Why risk them this late in the season to another injury that could potentially jeopardize them being ready for the start of the year? So I'm not quite buying the tanking argument, even though it's a convenient excuse. But as far as what the Giants do well, gosh, that is a tough one. Some people will say they lose pretty well, but I don't think that's what you're
An
looking
acquired
for.
skill.
Yeah, that's an acquired skill. What do they do well? I mean, can't even say the pass rush, which was really on fire to start the year. I mean, Brian Burns continues to play, well, all things considered, and he is absolutely banged up beyond, belief. I mean, what that guy is playing through is just amazing. Um, I would say other than that, not a whole lot. I honestly don't think there's a whole lot. I mean, in the past I might say, Dexter Lawrence, but he's on IR. I
Yeah.
might say, special teams with Graham Gano, but that's been kind of a mess due to injuries. So really, there's not a whole lot. Now, what I will say, this is kind of an interesting stat because I looked it up this morning while I was writing an article. The Giants have recorded 41 penalties in their last 4 games. Now they have 99 on the season. 41 of those have come in the last 4 games.
Wow.
So the lack of discipline has really started to go downhill. And here's the funny thing, Jake, is at least 3 of the categories in which the Giants are above league average, they're all pre-snap penalties. So if you're looking for, hope, Colts fans, that you're going to be able to keep it rolling, you can look at that. You could certainly look at the fact that the Giants are banged up. Their defense, they can't stop the run worth a dime. Okay, I mean, against the Falcons, they were exposed like crazy on the edges. So yeah, they're playing with injuries, but there's every team has injuries. And some people will say, well, not to the degree the Giants have. They're the most injured team in the league, but every team has them. It's just a matter of, is the depth behind those guys, the starters that you're missing, is the depth quality depth? Do you lose much when you put them in? Or, what happens? And we're kind of seeing what's happening without the Dexter Lawrences or the Bobby Okerekes or the Andrew Thomases or the Tyler Newmans. And it just hasn't been pretty.
I was going to say, when you look through their IR list, there's just so many important snaps they're losing to guys who are injured. And honestly, at that point, it is kind of like, well, what can you do? Like our most important players are unavailable. So I do feel for you there. It's the Colts have had some injury problems this year, but not quite as bad as they have in the past. I got this kind of a loaded one, but you can shrink it if you want. But in these last couple weeks for the Giants, what are they hoping to accomplish? Do you think like there's going to be a house cleaning at the end of the year, or what is there really to look for or accomplish, or I guess even anticipate into the offseason over these last couple weeks?
Well, I know everybody wants the number one overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on who you ask, some Giant fans want Shador Sanders, some want Cam Ward, some want the Giants to trade down and get more picks. So that's definitely something that I think a lot of people are hoping for. From the team perspective, like I said before, I don't believe they are looking to tank, because if they were, they would pull guys out and bubble wrap them. I gave an example in this article that I just published, saying that if you want to see what tanking looks like, look at what the Eagles did a few years ago when they benched Jalen Hurts for Nate Sudfeld on the basis of, oh, we want to see what Nate Sudfeld can bring to the table. That's tanking, folks. That's how I define tanking at any rate. But from the Giants' perspective, look, as far as what they're going to do, obviously Joe Shane, the general manager, Brian Dable, the head coach, on the hot seat. They are not necessarily a package deal. If I had to guess, and I know this is going to be very unpopular amongst my listeners, but if I had to guess, I think Shane will survive, even though I can honestly say that the ground underneath him has developed some cracks, whereas a few weeks ago, I would say he was on solid ground. There are some cracks underneath him. I'm not so sure that Dable survives this one. There's just too much evidence mounting against him. I mentioned the lack of discipline with the penalties, the fact that these last few games, they've been blown out of the water. Just the issues, the outbursts on the sideline, which continue to be, they're not as prominently discussed as they were last year, but that's an issue. And just, you could point to, well, why couldn't he get Daniel Jones back to where he was in 2022? You could look at a whole bunch of things, including the fact that the offense is worse this year than it has been in the 3 years Dable has been head coach. And the one change, of course, being Dable took over the play calling. So I'm not so sure Dable survives this one. I think the evidence is really, really piling up against him.
Yeah, that one's tough. Well, everybody, here in a moment, we will discuss what are the keys to win this one. Is it possible for the Giants? What do the Colts got to do? We'll tell you.
This episode of Crossover Thursday, Locked On Giants, Locked On Colts, is brought to you in part by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. This week, the New York Giants are a 7.5-point underdog, despite having lost their last 2 games by more than 2 scores. You think taking the Colts to cover is a sure bet? Well, hit up FanDuel and play your hunch. FanDuel lets you check out the latest stats, view live play-by-plays, and so much more, all on the very same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back to Crossover Thursday, Locked On Giants, Locked On Colts. I'm Patricia Traynor of Locked On Giants. He is Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts. And, of course, the Giants host the Colts on Sunday, 1 o'clock kickoff Eastern time at MetLife Stadium. And, Jake, let's talk about the keys to victory. I mean, we'll start with the Colts because, quite honestly, the Giants, I don't know what the keys to victory are. I've got to think about this one. So let's start with you since you're the visitor.
Yeah, so I think we just saw a pretty good example of it for the Colts. Offensively, it was their biggest output of the year on Sunday. Also 38 points. It was finally the game we had been waiting to see from them all season. Most of their most important pieces were healthy. Everyone was there. They were facing an inferior opponent, and they finally looked the part, offensively and defensively. Again, like I mentioned, until late in the third quarter when somehow a 38-7 lead became 38-30, like all within a quarter. So For me, that with the Colts, obviously the key is to run the ball. Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor. I mean, Jonathan Taylor went for 218 yards and 3 touchdowns. Anthony had 70 yards. So that's obviously an enormous number, but I think that recipe is what the Colts would like to be how they win games every week. I think they want to be a run-based offense, getting Anthony Richardson involved as well, but Jonathan Taylor really driving the engine. With establishing the run like that, that creates play action opportunities and, just kind of classic run heavy offense because they do have the guys to take advantage of that. I mean, Alec Pierce was out last week, but he's been in the concussion protocol, but he was able to get in a limited practice on Friday. So hopefully he can come back in time and kind of be their key deep threat that they need him to be. So run the ball, let that kind of breed some play action opportunities for you. Also, that just kind of controls the clock and speeds things up and just gets us all out of here on time, So run the ball defensively. I really like what they did as well. Get some pressure, but create turnovers as well. They've done really well. They had 3 interceptions each in the last 2 weeks. That's usually going to lead to wins. It of course didn't against the Broncos a couple weeks ago, but against opponents that are really struggling like the Giants, that should be pretty good. And then if you get that big lead, number 3 for me, keep it up. Like sportsmanship, feel good stuff, that's great, but you've seen what happens and how quickly a lead can dissipate. A 31-point lead nearly disappeared within a quarter for you guys. If you get that big lead, keep it up defensively, keep bringing pressure, put them away offensively, keep up with the things that got you that lead. The Colts pulled Jonathan Taylor and basically, wasted a couple of drives until the Titans started to come back, and then they put him back there. And then what do you know? They were able to kind of the offense was able to put it away at the end of the game. So build your lead with the run game, protect it, and then defensively, pressure and creating those turnovers are huge, and it's things we've seen them do really, really well the past couple weeks. So what about the Giants? Is there anything in you that thinks they might have a chance?
Well, I guess there's always a chance as long as you show up, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but seriously, I mean, it's going to sound very fundamental here, but the first thing the Giants need to do if they want to have any chance of winning this game is they can't make mistakes that end up costing them. I mean, I'll point to the last drive against the Falcons game as a good example. Now, granted, that drive was in garbage time. There was no way the Giants were going to come back and win. But on that drive, the Giants had half of their penalties the entire game. So they had 10 penalties. I think they had 5 penalties on that one drive alone. They're not good enough to overcome those types of mistakes. And I mentioned earlier about all the pre-snap penalties and playing with discipline. This team has just not done that basically all season long, and it has come back to bite them. You can't have, the quarterback holding on to the ball forever and throwing it late, and now all of a sudden the defender is jumping the route, which we saw in the game as well. So the Giants have got to play as close as possible to a mistake-free game as they can. Whether or not they can do it, I don't know. I mean, they haven't done it in basically all season long, well, except for maybe 2 games, we could say, the 2 ones that they had. But that was just so long ago. It seems like it was an eternity. So that's key number 1. Defensively, look, you're dealing with a young quarterback in Anthony Richardson. You got to get after him. All right. Now, against the Falcons, who started Michael Penix Jr. for the first time, how many times did the Giants sack him? Guess? Okay. The number of wins that the Giants have at home, which is 0. How many times did the Giants get pressure on Michael Penix Jr. to where they hit him? Just 2. The Giants pass rush started off on fire. At one point they were leading the league in sacks. They have cooled off significantly to where they have something like 5 sacks, I want to say, in their last 6 games. All right. That's not going to get it done. When you have a young quarterback, especially, you want to get after him. You want to confuse him. You want to make him throw the ball on your terms. Giants just haven't been able to do that. And when a young quarterback has all that time back there, they can sit there and basically, look like the next Dan Marino. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
So that's going to be a key. And then, look, I'm going to throw in special teams. Last week, special teams didn't cost the Giants, but it just seems like every game at home, special teams does something, whether it's they miss blocks, whether it's they allow a big return, a missed field goal, a shank punt, whatever the case may be, there's always something that pops up with that unit that just makes you say, what are you doing? So field position, starting field position is especially key for a team that is struggling to move the ball, to score, and to give their fans something to cheer about other than the fact that they're on en route to getting the number one overall pick in the draft.
Yeah, that's tough, man. But I will tell you again, the Colts have not once maintained like four quarters of complimentary football in their 7 wins. Even they've been really close calls. They let teams stay in it. So if any team is within a score, they've got a chance. So while I do think the Colts win this one, like I'm not going to completely discount the Giants.
You have more confidence than I do, Jake, because the Giants, they get off to a slow start and then teams just run away with the lead. And then it's like, we get into garbage time and that's when they start padding stats and padding the score and all that stuff. And you just can't have that. If the Giants can't get off to a fast start and take a commanding lead and hold that lead, which again, they haven't really been able to do all season long, then, it's going to be another long afternoon for those of us who cover the Giants. So we'll see. You never know. That's why you show up and you play the game. You never know what's going to happen. I know a lot of people will probably be upset if the Giants go on and win that game and the Raiders, keep pace, because that's going to upset the top of the draft order. But we will see. It should be, it's come down to the wire. It's come down to the wire for the Colts, the Giants. It's come down to the end, mercifully. So we will see how it plays off. And Giant fans, Colt fans, we want to thank you for tuning in to this episode of Crossover Thursday. We had an absolute blast talking ball. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope everybody had a happy holiday. And of course, if you're still celebrating, we hope you continue to have a happy holiday, have a happy new year. And don't forget, check us out. I'll be back with an episode on Friday, Locked On Giants. Jake will be back with an episode of Locked On Colts as we continue to get you through the 2024 NFL season. For Jake Arthur, I'm Patricia Traina. Have a good one, everybody. We'll see you soon.